Hello, this is Gloomy Sunday, and once again, I will be sharing spooky stories that will send shivers down your thorny spine. Without further ado, let's begin tonight's creepy, spooky, and sometimes outlandish array of tales. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. I was only in grade school when this happened. It took place in our old family compound in the sleepy town of Santa Eugenia, nestled deep in the province. Most of our relatives lived within the same gated property, in adjacent houses with shared driveways and gardens. One of the homes, my cousin Lorenzo's, was undergoing major renovations at the time. That meant construction workers were in and out during the day, and at times, the house would be empty. One lazy afternoon, with no adults in sight and curiosity burning in my bones, I sneaked into the house. No permission was given, nobody even knew I was there. The workers were off for the day, and the place was utterly silent. The renovation had added an extension to the back of the house, making it feel unfamiliar and slightly disjointed, like a body stitched together by mismatched limbs. I wandered around aimlessly, eventually finding myself by an old window that used to sit next to the main door. From that spot, I could see through the kitchen to the back door. The lighting inside was strange, too dim in some places, too bright in others. Then something caught my eye. The back door was wide open, and someone, or something, was peeking in. It was a child. Small. His hair was short and tightly curled. A boy, definitely. But no matter how hard I squinted, I couldn't make out his face. His features were hidden by the glare of the sunlight behind him, or perhaps he had no face at all. I stood frozen. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe it was just one of our younger cousins playing. But none of my cousins had hair like that. None were that small. And none would play alone outside the under-renovation house in total silence. The child, or whatever it was, kept peeking through the back door again and again. It was almost playful, as if it were trying to lure me into a game of hide-and-seek. Still, I wasn't scared, yet. I didn't know much about ghosts or spirits at that age, and my mind hadn't yet learned to fear the unexplainable. I just watched, quietly confused. But things didn't stop there. Every time I visited Lorenzo's house after that, particularly when I sat in their dining room, I would get this sensation, this heavy, invisible gaze from behind. There was a chair directly behind the dining room door. I could never shake the feeling that someone, something, was standing there, just out of sight, watching. Sometimes I'd whip my head around suddenly, hoping to catch whoever it was. Nothing. But the air would feel colder, thicker. And whenever I climbed the staircase, which happened to be directly above the kitchen, I always felt eyes peering at me from the dark spaces beneath the steps. I would rush up 2 steps at a time, trying to outrun the invisible presence I was certain was just inches from my ankles. The second floor was worse. There were cold spots. Random ones. Places that made the fine hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. And the silence, it felt alive. I never spoke of these things to anyone. I didn't understand them. I didn't want to. And some part of me hoped I was just imagining it all. But then came the night everything was confirmed. We were all sitting in the garage one evening, me and a few cousins, casually chatting under the buzz of a dim bulb. Eventually, the conversation turned to ghost stories. That's when Lorenzo started talking. He said there was a boy, a curly-haired child, who often peeked in through their back door. He said there was a figure that stood behind the dining room door, and something that lurked under the stairs. My heart sank. He described, in vivid detail, the exact same things I had been seeing. feeling, avoiding. That was when the fear finally sank in. That was when I realized I hadn't imagined any of it. I never entered that house alone again. Years later, when I was in college, I stayed over at a classmate's house in a different town, San Benedicto. The layout was different, but as soon as I stepped into the dining area, a familiar chill brushed past me. The space beneath the stairs, directly beside the dining room, pulled my gaze repeatedly. That same heaviness. That same cold. That same sense of being watched. I tried to ignore it. But eventually, my classmate mentioned, unprompted, that others had felt something strange in that exact area. As if someone was always watching. Since then, I've never questioned my instincts again. Even when I don't see anything, when it's just a feeling, I believe it. I don't know if I have a heightened sense of perception, or if I'm simply more open to these things. But the presence of the unseen, it lingers. And it remembers. I can shrug it off, pretend I'm unaffected. But something always watches from the shadows. And it never blinks. This story is a masterful build-up of psychological and supernatural tension. What begins as a curious childhood exploration slowly morphs into a terrifying realization that something non-human has attached itself to a place, or perhaps, to the narrator. What makes this tale especially haunting is the subtlety of the horror. There are no loud bangs, no sudden apparitions, just the overwhelming feeling of being observed, followed by the slow-burning confirmation that it was never just in your head. The use of repetition, the eyes under the stairs, the unseen presence behind the door makes the story almost cyclical, like the haunting isn't tied to a location, but to the person telling the story. This makes the ending particularly chilling. When the narrator feels the same gaze in a different town, we're forced to consider that maybe the presence has followed them all along. Perhaps the most unsettling part. The narrator still lives with the possibility of being watched even now. And maybe, so do we. Now let's read the next story. My friend Nathan Carter and I were fishing along a quiet stretch of the Eddington River, and I remember it clearly. We were reeling in tons of solid 2 to 4 pound smallmouth bass. The day had been perfect. The sun was starting to dip into the trees, painting the water in gold. We had waded nearly a mile downstream without even realizing how far we'd gone. Realizing the daylight was fading fast, we decided it was time to head back to the gravel parking lot where our cars were parked. As we started the slow trek upstream, Nathan's lure got snagged in a low-hanging branch. He walked over to retrieve it. After yanking it free, he turned to me with a strange look in his eyes and asked, "Do you feel that?" I blinked. "Feel what?" He rubbed his arms. The hair on my arms and neck just stood up. Like, all of it. Like static or something. I didn't feel anything. Not yet. So we shrugged it off and kept walking, occasionally casting a few more lines as we made our way back. But that's when the atmosphere around us shifted. Something had changed. As we trudged through the knee-deep water, I started hearing footsteps. But they weren't ours. They came from the shoreline, just past the tree line, like someone was pacing us, trailing us. I tried to convince myself it was just a deer or raccoon rustling through the underbrush. Until Nathan froze and said, "You're hearing it too, right?" I nodded slowly, my mouth suddenly dry. Yeah. Something's following us. I scanned the woods, nothing. Not a single movement. The trees stood still, as if holding their breath. The steps would pause when we stopped. They would resume when we did. But no matter how hard we looked, we never saw anything. Trying to push the creeping dread aside, we pressed forward. I told myself it was just paranoia. I told myself the forest was playing tricks. But deep down, I knew something was wrong. At one point, I stopped to untangle my fishing line. I walked toward a flat patch of rocks by the riverbank, rested my rod, and began fixing the snag. The footsteps didn't stop. In fact, I heard them approach, crunching right up to where I was. I glanced up, expecting to see Nathan beside me. He wasn't. He was still 20 feet back, casting his line into the current. My blood turned to ice. "Nathan," I called, my voice shaking. "Get over here. Now." I swear something just walked up right behind me. Nathan always carries a sidearm when we fish out this far, out of signal, out of reach. I felt slightly safer with him nearby. But nothing happened. No visual, no figure. Just that thick, pressing presence. We didn't speak for a while, just fished with our eyes constantly scanning the brush. But the footsteps didn't stop. They never stopped. They followed us along every bend, through every shallow. Even when we reached a more open stretch of the river where the woods gave way to farmland and the tree line disappeared, the sound continued. Heavy. Deliberate. Following. At one point, I spoke aloud into the dusk, my voice firm. "This world belongs to God. You have no right to follow us. No right to harm us." The steps didn't falter. Nathan and I exchanged nervous glances. I said louder, "We didn't mean to disturb you. If we did, I'm sorry. We're just here to fish. Leave us alone." Still, it trailed us. When we finally reached a bend that led back to the parking lot, the sky was almost black. The riverbank grew narrower, and the darkness around us thickened like smoke. "Nathan," I said, forcing calm into my voice, "let's head to the cars. Maybe grab some more lures." He looked puzzled. "You still want to fish?" I shot him a glance. "Let's just get to the car first. Then decide." He followed without another word, finally sensing the urgency I was trying to disguise. We didn't run, but we walked fast. When I reached my car, I threw everything into the trunk as fast as I could. Nathan did the same. We didn't look back. Once we were both on the road and merging onto Highway 9, we finally called each other. At the exact same time, we both said something was following us. We prayed. Out loud. Desperately. Begging for protection, asking that nothing would follow us home or touch our families. Before I walked inside my house that night, I stood at the doorway and spoke clearly, loudly. "This is God's house. You are not welcome here. You do not belong. You have no power in this place. You are not allowed to follow." Only then did I cross the threshold. Nathan and I didn't talk about that night for weeks. Not out of forgetfulness, but fear. Whatever it was, it wanted us to know it was there. That it was watching. That we were never alone. And now, I still fish. But I never return to that part of the river. Not ever again. This story isn't just chilling, it's a direct confrontation with something that feels ancient, territorial, and invisible. What's horrifying is how quiet it all was. No loud screeches or ghostly apparitions. Just footsteps. Just presence. That's what makes it feel so real, because it isn't the scream in the dark that unsettles you most. It's the slow, deliberate steps behind you. The unseen eyes. The silence that listens. The narrator's instinct to never say they're going home. the spiritual rebuke before entering the house, the mutual unspoken terror, these are survival instincts. Whatever followed them, it wasn't just a lost spirit. It wanted something. And perhaps, it still does. Hope you enjoyed our spooky and strange stories. Join us next time for more. Take care and boo-bye.